Welcome back to Actionable Reads. Ready to get philosophical?
Yeah, always up for a good, thought-provoking session.
Well, today we're diving deep into a book that's all about that thinking deeply, but in a way you might not expect.
Oh, color me intrigued. What do we got?
It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Zen and motorcycles, an interesting combo. Not your typical self-help book, I'm guessing?
You got it. It's a story of a father-son motorcycle trip across America. But here's the twist. It's interwoven with all these philosophical reflections.
Sounds like a journey for both the mind and the open road.
Exactly. It's Zen, motorcycles, and fixing stuff. At first glance, you're like, what could these possibly have in common? But trust me, it all comes together in a really fascinating way. We'll be unpacking it all for you today.
I'm ready to unpack. Where do we start?
Let's start with the narrator, our guide on this journey. He's seeking something deeper, a way to escape that day-to-day shallowness we all feel sometimes. You ever get that feeling?
Oh, absolutely. Like you're just going through the motions. Yeah, I know that feeling all too well.
Right, exactly. And this book offers some really insightful ways to think about that. It's like we're all on a motorcycle trip, metaphorically speaking.
Okay, I'm liking this metaphor already. Keep going.
So the book is kind of a reminder to be present, to be mindful, to appreciate the journey, not just focused on the destination.
I see, I see. Now, who else is along for this metaphorical ride?
The narrator has two companions, John and Sylvia. They're pretty resistant to anything mechanical. Then there's his son, Chris, who's much more open to learning.
Ah, so we've got different personalities, different approaches to life, all thrown together. Sounds like a recipe for some interesting dynamics.
Definitely. And it really gets you thinking about how you approach challenges in your own life. Are you more the avoid getting your hands dirty type?
Yeah.
Or are you curious about how things work?
I'd say I'm a bit of both, to be honest. Depends on the situation, right?
Totally. But the narrator, he's all about understanding how things work, especially when it comes to his motorcycle. He's patient, methodical, and he really cares about the process, not just the end result.
Interesting. So it's not just about fixing the bike. It's about the how and the why behind it.
Exactly. He wants to help John, his companion, not just get his motorcycle running again, but really understand why it broke down in the first place.
Ah, so it's about empowering others to solve problems, not just doing it for them. I like that.
And that's where the concept of felt need comes in. If someone doesn't feel like they need help, it's almost impossible to teach them anything.
Makes sense. It's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water.
Exactly. You have to meet people where they are, understand their perspective before trying to impose your own solutions.
Okay, I'm already seeing how this book is full of these little nuggets of wisdom. What else have you got?
One of the most intriguing concepts is Phaedrus Knife. Now, I know that might sound a bit intimidating.
It does sound a little intense.
But it's actually a tool we all use, whether we realize it or not. It's how we break things down into parts to analyze them.
Okay, so give me an example. How does that apply to everyday life?
Sure. Imagine you're planning a vacation. You might use Phaedrus' knife to break the problem down into smaller parts, budget, destination, activities, and so on. By separating the whole into manageable pieces, you can avoid feeling overwhelmed.
Right, so it's about taking a complex problem and breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. Classic problem-solving technique.
Exactly. But the book cautions that there's a potential downside to this too.
Oh, what's that?
You have to be careful not to get so caught up in the individual parts that you lose sight of the whole.
Right, like focusing so much on the individual trees that you miss the beauty of the forest.
Exactly. So it's a delicate balance. We need to find that sweet spot between analyzing things and appreciating the bigger picture.
Okay, so we've got this felt need. We've got Phaedrus' knife. Sounds like the narrator's got some pretty unique ways of looking at the world.
He does, and one thing that he keeps coming back to is this feeling that even when we're being perfectly rational, things can sometimes feel meaningless. Like there's a disconnect between logic and something more profound.
So he's questioning the limits of reason. That's deep stuff.
It is, and that's where this idea of the ghost of rationality comes in. His alter ego, Phaedrus, was obsessed with trying to understand this. He was searching for something called quality, something that goes beyond logic, something deeper.
Okay, I'm definitely hooked. Quality with a capital Q. I like the sound of that. We got to dive into that more, right?
Absolutely. We'll be unpacking that in more detail in the next part of our deep dive. But before we get there, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about how the narrator cares about the process as much as the result.
Yeah, I remember. He's not just fixing things. He's trying to understand them.
And it's not just about motorcycles. It's about everything, right?
Yeah.
Finding satisfaction in the work itself, not just the outcome.
Right, right. Like if you're only focused on the destination, you might miss the incredible scenery along the way. Sounds a lot like the message of this whole book, actually.
Exactly. It's not just about fixing a motorcycle, it's about the journey of self-discovery, finding meaning in the everyday.
I love that. And I can't wait to see where this journey takes us in the next part of our deep dive. So we left off talking about quality, this mysterious concept that goes beyond simple logic. And it's really interesting how Phaedrus, the narrator's alter ego, really struggled to define it. He even explored philosophers like Hume and Kant, getting deep into the nature of knowledge itself.
Yeah, Hume and Kant, those are some big names in philosophy. I have to admit, when I first read about them, my eyes kind of glazed over. But I'm curious, how do their ideas connect to this quality thing, for our listeners who might not be philosophy experts?
Absolutely. Hume, he basically said all our knowledge comes from our senses, what we see, hear, touch, But Phaedrus, he had a problem with that. What about things like quality or beauty? You can't really touch or taste those, can you?
No, they're more like feelings, judgments, not something you can measure scientifically.
Exactly. That's where Kant comes in. He said we have these built-in mental frameworks, you could call them categories of understanding, that help us make sense of the world. So even though we can't directly perceive quality with our senses, it's still a real concept that shapes our understanding.
Oh, I see. So Kant's saying there's more to reality than just what we observe. It's like this invisible layer of meaning, of value that we add to the world.
You got it. And at first, Phaedrus was really excited about Kant's ideas, but then he started to feel like it was just another intellectual trap. He was still searching for something deeper, something that went beyond both the purely rational and the purely subjective.
So he kind of went beyond Western philosophy, right? Explored Eastern thought, the concept of oneness.
That's right. One concept that really hit him was tat famamasi. It means thou art that. The idea is that everything's interconnected. There's no real separation between us and everything else.
Wow, that's a mind-blowing concept.
Yeah.
So instead of seeing the world as a bunch of separate things, you start to see it all as one big whole, like a giant web where everything's connected.
Exactly. And that's where the Zen part of the book's title comes into play. It's about finding that sense of interconnectedness, that harmony with everything around you.
So it's not just some abstract mystical thing. It has real-world implications.
It does. And the interesting thing is, the book doesn't just focus on Phaedrus and his journey. It also explores the narrator's personal struggles, his search for meaning. He's haunted by Phaedrus's legacy and trying to put the pieces of his past together.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to solve a mystery. And that makes it so much more relatable. It's not just a philosophy lecture. It's a story about real people with real questions.
Absolutely. And as the narrator dives deeper into Phaedrus's ideas, he starts to realize that maybe seeing too much can be a problem. It can lead you down this rabbit hole of doubt and uncertainty.
Yeah, I get that. Like there's a balance between seeking knowledge and needing some kind of grounding, some stability.
Right. I think we can all relate to that, especially today. We're bombarded with information all the time. It's easy to get lost in these abstract ideas, but we need to find a way to connect them back to our everyday lives.
Speaking of everyday life, let's go back to that motorcycle metaphor. The narrator talks about how even though a motorcycle functions based on reason, understanding the mechanics isn't enough. There's more to it, right?
Yes. He says you need to grasp the idea behind the function.
And that's where quality comes in again, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about whether something works, it's about how well it works, how it's designed, how it resonates with us.
Exactly. It's about appreciating the craftsmanship, the care, the thought that goes into making something truly great.
So it's about striving for excellence in everything we do, both the journey and the destination.
That's it. And what's really cool is that this applies to everything, not just motorcycles. Writing, cooking, building relationships, there's a level of quality we can bring to it all. It's really empowering because it means even the most ordinary things can have meaning.
But I remember Phaedrus worried that pursuing quality could make people arrogant. Like thinking their way's the only way.
It's a valid point. It's easy to fall into that trap.
But the narrator seems to suggest that true quality is something that connects us, not divides us. It's about finding common ground, even with people who see things differently.
Definitely. And that requires being open-minded, being empathetic, being willing to step outside our comfort zones. It all comes back to this conversation between the narrator and the ghost of Phaedrus. They're struggling with big questions. What is reality? What are the limits of reason? What's beyond all that?
It's a conversation that feels really relevant today, especially in a world that's so focused on technology and data. We need that balance between the rational and the intuitive, you know?
Absolutely. We have to remember there's more to life than just facts and figures. There's beauty and meaning to be found everywhere, even in the everyday. And this pursuit of quality, it's a journey worth taking.
I love that. And this book gives us some real tools for that journey, right?
Yeah, it does. But let's come back to Earth for a moment. Remember, the narrator's also trying to understand how Phaedrus' pursuit of quality led to his downfall.
Yeah, that's a good point. It raises a big question. What happens when that search for perfection becomes an obsession, when you go too far? That's something we'll explore in the last part of our deep dive. Welcome back to Actionable Reads. We've been exploring Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance, this whole idea of quality, and how it can apply to just about everything. But as we hinted, there's kind of a dark side to this pursuit, too. What happens when the search for excellence goes a little too far?
That's the real question, isn't it? The book doesn't shy away from showing us that even the best ideas, when taken to an extreme, can get a bit distorted.
Yeah, like Phaedrus' obsession with quality. It took him down a path of isolation and ultimately a breakdown. Makes you wonder, where's the line between striving for something good and becoming, obsessed?
It's a tough balance, and I think the book is really a cautionary tale against becoming too rigid in our thinking. Staying flexible, open to new information, recognizing there's always more than one way to see things.
Right. Like that saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If we only approach problems from one perspective, we're bound to miss something, right?
Exactly. And for me, one of the most powerful things the book highlights is the importance of human connection. Throughout the journey, the narrator's not only dealing with his own past, but also trying to connect with his son, Chris.
It's interesting how that father-son relationship kind of mirrors the narrator's internal struggle with Phaedrus, like he's trying to reconcile different parts of himself.
It does. And as a parent myself, that part really resonated with me. The narrator, he's trying to guide Chris without forcing his own beliefs, teach him how to think for himself.
So helping him learn to use that Phaedrus' knife wisely, analyze the world without getting lost in the details.
Exactly. And that's a valuable lesson for all of us, right? Cultivating curiosity, open-mindedness, and that willingness to embrace, well, life's a little messy sometimes.
It definitely is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your biggest takeaways? What really stood out for you?
For me, it's that reminder that pursuing quality isn't just about reaching some finish line. It's about the journey, becoming more thoughtful, engaged, and present in our lives, finding meaning in everyday moments.
That's a good one. I think the book also challenges us to look beyond the surface,
Yeah.
see the ideas behind things and appreciate how everything's connected.
I agree. It's a call to be more mindful, more curious, and to approach life with a sense of wonder. And it starts with paying attention, being present, kind of like what we've been doing here, really digging into this book.
Exactly. And hopefully our listeners will take these ideas and make them their own, apply them to their own lives, their own journeys.
I hope so too.
So as you go about your day, your week, remember these takeaways. Embrace the challenges, the setbacks, even the breakdowns, because those are often the moments that teach us the most. Who knows, you might even find a little Zen along the way. Thanks for joining us on Actionable Reads, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.